you cancel plans, and you feel relief before the message even sends. Not guilt, not hesitation, relief. And then, almost immediately, a quiet voice in the background says, "Should I feel bad about this?" Because we've built a world that treats being out there as the default. The noise, the movement, the constant presence of other people. But nobody really talks about the ones who feel most like themselves when everything goes quiet. The ones who don't just stay home. They prefer it. And here's the strange part. This group doesn't look broken from the outside. They go to work. They show up when it matters. They can be social, even charming. But left to their own choices, they almost always drift back to the same place, home, not as an escape, as a preference. And that difference matters more than people think. Because staying home isn't always about avoiding the world. Sometimes, it's about finally feeling like you're not performing inside it. But here's where it gets more interesting. Most people assume this is just introversion, low energy, social fatigue. End of story. Except, it's not that simple. There are people who love staying home, who aren't shy at all, who can handle rooms, conversations, attention, and still choose solitude over and over again. So what's actually going on here? Why does being at home feel better than being anywhere else? To understand that, you have to go back, not to personality, to environment. It's 2008. You're sitting in your room, laptop open, phone nearby. A conversation is happening somewhere online. The world is there, but it's filtered, controlled on your terms. You can leave at any moment. No awkward exits, no explanations, just silence. And for the first time, connection doesn't require presence. A study published in Computers in Human Behavior found that people who engage more in digitally mediated interaction often report higher comfort with solitude and greater preference for controlled social environments. In simple terms, you learn that you don't have to go out to feel connected. And once that door opens, it doesn't really close. But the real reason runs deeper than technology. It's about control. Out there, everything is unpredictable. Noise levels you didn't choose, conversations you didn't ask for, energy you're expected to match. At home, everything changes. The lighting, the silence, the pace. You decide when something starts. And more importantly, when it ends. Psychologists call this environmental self-regulation, the ability to shape your surroundings to match your internal state. And for some people, that alignment isn't a luxury. It's the only place their mind actually settles. But that's only half the story. Because what looks like comfort is also something else entirely. Depth. People who enjoy staying home often spend more time inside their own thoughts. Not passively, actively. A study published in the Journal of Personality found that individuals comfortable with solitude show higher levels of introspection and creative thinking. They don't need constant input because their inner world is already full. They replay conversations. They imagine alternatives. They notice patterns most people rush past, and that changes something fundamental. Because when your inner world becomes engaging enough, the outside world has to compete with it. So what does all of this actually create in a person? Someone who can be completely alone and not feel alone at all. But here's the contradiction at the center of it. The same people who feel most at peace in solitude are often the ones who understand people the most. They observe more than they speak. They listen more than they interrupt. They notice the small shifts, tone hesitation, what wasn't said. And yet, they still choose distance. Not because they don't care, but because they feel everything. A little more than they want to. That quiet preference for home. It's not always about disinterest. Sometimes, it's about intensity. And this is what most people miss. There are two very different reasons people stay home. One fills you up. The other shuts you down. On the surface, they look identical. Canceled plans, quiet weekends, fewer interactions. But internally, they couldn't be more different. One feels like peace. The other feels like weight. A study in the Journal of Social and Clinical Psychology found that solitude chosen freely is associated with higher well-being, while isolation driven by avoidance or anxiety correlates with lower mood and increased stress. So the question isn't, do you stay home? It's, why do you stay home? Because when it's healthy, it looks like this. You wake up slowly, no urgency, no performance waiting for you. You make coffee the way you like it, sit in the same spot you always do. There's a rhythm to it, a quiet consistency. You're not bored. You're settled. You don't need the world to constantly validate your existence because you're not disconnected from yourself. And that's rarer than it should be. But in the modern world, this kind of life gets misunderstood. We celebrate visibility, activity, being seen. Go out more, meet more people. Don't waste your time. As if stillness is a problem to fix. But maybe it's a signal that not everyone is wired for noise, that some people are built for depth, for slower thoughts, longer attention, fewer, more meaningful interactions. And then something shifts, because over time, people who love staying home stop trying to explain it. They stop apologizing for canceled plans, stop forcing themselves into environments that never felt right. They just adjust. Quietly, they build lives that match their energy instead of fighting against it. And from the outside, it can look small. But from the inside, it feels like alignment. So maybe the question isn't why some people love staying at home. Maybe it's why we assume they shouldn't. Because not everyone is missing out. Some people have just figured out what actually fills them up. And they chose that, deliberately, again and again. If this felt a little too accurate, you're probably one of them. And there's more of this kind of psychology here, everywhere.